Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Knicks. On today's episode, a dominant win over the Pistons, a breakout performance for Jalen Brunson, and could the Rockets pose a threat tonight? All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to remind you that your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. I also want to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Gavin Schall, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today. And every day, you can do that by subscribing on YouTube and, of course, subscribing on your favorite podcast platform of choice. I am, of course, the host of this podcast, the host of the Saturday edition of the Locked On NBA podcast, and apologize for a little bit of a late start here on the live. Managed to break the USB on my mic, could not find my backup, so the audio is a little off. I'm going to preemptively apologize for that, though it's a big improvement over what I had going on Saturday. Anyways, that's not why you're here. Why you're here is because the New York Knicks thrashed the Detroit Pistons on Friday night, a 128-98 victory. And they look dominant for the first time since that Pacers game. The Knicks had no issues at 39-13 first quarter. The lead got as high. It was something like 40. I got to put it in my notes. It was 48-17, 49-17. At one point, the Knicks were up in this one. And we got our first great Jalen Brunson game of the year. But before getting into that, I want to kind of take a wider scope of where the Knicks are at. This was the fourth straight game with all four Knicks in double figures. It's the first time that's happened in 39 or 35 years since 1989. The Knicks are now fifth in net rating in the NBA. They're third in offense, 16th in defense, and it feels like they have found something. And you don't want to read too much into early season games just because of the sample size, right? Like I was freaking out after they lost to the Cavs and like kind of implying, all right, like are we really sure Cat is it? And he's done nothing but play like all NBA caliber ball since then, right? You don't want to react too much to the negative. You don't want to react too much to the positive, particularly against the Pistons team that is clearly much improved, but still has some major defensive lapses, right? Like a lot of the stuff I've seen in this game, I was like, all right, is this the Knicks like recreating the 2013 Spurs, or is it just that the Pistons suck? We need a larger sample size. Again, the fact that the offense did relatively well against the Celtics, did a little less well, but certainly had stretches of real success against the Cavaliers, despite Cat not really being involved and despite Jalen having his worst game of the year. I think we can pretty confidently say the Knicks are going to have a top five in offense in basketball, pending pretty good health, right? The balance, the rhythm they've found. And I think the biggest thing, and we said this right after the Cavs game, is that they are shooting the three ball with abandon after ranking 30th in the NBA through their first four games in three-point attempts. They have gotten up a bunch, 18-38 against Detroit. I think that number would have been potentially substantially higher if it needed to be, and it was a closer game. And then against the Miami Heat, of course, we saw Cat shoot it really well. The Knicks as a team shot it incredibly well, 18 of 40 from distance in that one. It is not just the fact that they're going in. I think actually the more important thing is that they are going up with consistency, and the Knicks have been willing to fire. The starting five looks like a dominant unit. Again, small sample size, but hear me out on this. There are 19 lineups in the NBA that have played at least 50 minutes so far. Out of those lineups, the Knicks have played, I think the group has played the fourth or fifth most minutes, and they have the second best net rating of that group. They've outscored opponents by 20 points per per 100 possessions when their starting lineup is on the floor. And the Knicks clearly have some depth issues right now, which is preventing them from getting to that starting lineup maybe as much as you would want. And of course, in the playoffs, I think that'll be less of an issue because you inevitably play less guys. And again, it's the sixth most played lineup in the NBA, so maybe I'm reading a little too much into that. But the Knicks are certainly mixing and matching more than they are in the past because they don't have that same depth. Because Precious Achiuwa is out, because Mitchell Robinson's out, and of course, guys like Isaiah Hartenstein and Dante DiVincenzo are no longer on the team. So you need your starters to supplement the bench units a little bit more. But it is obviously an incredibly good sign that when the Knicks have their best five out there, things are looking good. As far as the actual basketball, they played brilliantly in this one, and I'm curious to see if the highs of this game translate against better teams. So the first thing I'm looking at is Jalen Brunson, because it felt like 2K on rookie mode for him in this game. It hit his first 5 threes, had over 20 points less than halfway through the second quarter, was just doing whatever he wanted with the poor Pistons, who were throwing like Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway on him. In particular, the pick and roll game or the pick and pop game was pretty dominant. Shax, who works for the Strickland, one of the best Knicks follows out there. Like he went play by play, tracking every offensive set the Knicks ran. They put up about 1.75 points per possession when Jalen Brunson scored or passed and the shot resulted directly out of the pick and roll. Some quick math for you guys. That is the equivalent of shooting about 87.5% from the field if you were taking all twos. So they pretty much scored every single time they ran a pick and roll, whether it was Jericho Sims, whether it was Karl Anthony Towns. It didn't really matter. And this is something I've touched on and talked about a few different times on this pod, but Jalen's first year and a half on the Knicks, we did not really get to see him as a pick and roll operator, right? Because Isaiah, in terms of having a dive big, right? Like someone who's going to set a pick, roll right to the rim, and then you kind of have Jalen with 3 shooters around him, like either getting to his own shot, throwing the lob, or spraying it out to a shooter and playing out of that. That is, again, the template for how Luka Doncic operates a lot of the time. That is the template for how LeBron James has operated for years with an incredible amount of success. And the Knicks just haven't really had the shooting to supplement that, right? With Julius Randle, you have a guy that defenses were sort of guarding. With RJ Barrett, you had a guy who defenses, now he's shooting it really well. He's been incredible this year. You have a guy who defenses generally really weren't guarding. Now, the Knicks have shooting galore. The other part of that is a big that'll actually roll all the way to the basket, right? Mitchell Robinson would sort of do that, but he was just a little bit clunky. And for whatever reason, Jalen, maybe it took him improving as a lob passer. He would never really throw that pass. Isaiah Hartenstein more so like the short roll and kind of operate as more of a facilitator or get up that little flip shot. Something flipped about halfway through last season, and that something was the Knicks acquiring Precious Achiuwa and having a myriad of injuries at the center spot. And Achiuwa actually wanted to roll all the way to the rim, right? And like he was getting dunk after dunk after dunk. The Knicks don't have him right now, but they have Jericho Sims who's willing to do that. He hasn't played much the last 2 games, but they have Ariel Hukporti who's willing to do that. Towns is not that kind of big, but he's a weapon, obviously, as a shooter and as a roller that defenses have to respect and have to pay attention to. And that is creating openings for Jalen Brunson that just weren't there with Mitchell Robinson, weren't really there to the same extent with Isaiah Hartenstein. You could do other really good stuff with Hartenstein, but you couldn't necessarily do that. So just running through some of the pick and roll possessions. The first one was Sims. He got a 3 off a Sims screen and dive. Screen and not dive. That was morbid. Screen and dive. And what I saw in that one is that it was Sims setting a really high screen near half court. And you saw Cat do the same thing against the Heat, where Cat set, I believe the term is a flat screen, where you were essentially, instead of being parallel to the sideline, you were parallel to the baseline. So Cat flat behind Jalen Brunson, and it kind of gives more optionality because you can attack either shoulder if you're Brunson, and it changes the way Cat can roll off it and attack too. But also just setting screens further up the court, right? This is something we were looking at early last season when Jalen was really confident, bombing from 30 feet. And Fred Katz of The Athletic had this really good article about how Jalen, since he came to the Knicks have a 4-point line drawn in their Westchester practice facility. And Jalen has been fixated since he's got here on shooting from there, extending his range. We haven't seen it with a lot of consistency this year, but defenses have started to respect him out there. And when you have defenses guarding you 27, 28 feet away from the basket, and you have a spread floor, it gives Jalen so much leverage to turn the corner, right? So now defenses are like, all right, like either we're going to step up and he's going to blow by us, or we're sitting back a little bit. That time Jalen put a 3 in the defender's eye. Another one was Sims, and this time Jalen got Malik Beasley on his hip. And then just showed off great patience, right? Like this is improved pick and roll craft for him, even though we saw some of this in the past, where he waits for Sims to roll, that drags Isaiah Stewart out of the play, already has Beasley on his hip. Brunson doesn't give up that advantage, gets all the way to the rim, and gets a layup. And you can just see how unguardable this is unless you have an elite pick and roll navigator, right? Against the Celtics with Drew Holiday and Derek White, they're so good getting around screens. They're so strong. They're so physical. They're so good blocking shots at the rim. It becomes a little bit more difficult. But against a team like the Pistons, that's going to work all day. Against most teams in the NBA, that is going to work all day. And it's really exciting for me when you get Precious back, to a slightly lesser extent, when you get Mitchell Robinson back. I want to see them running more of that, and maybe even with Deuce McBride at times in for Josh Hart with those lineups, and having like truly 4-out spacing where the defender just cannot leave the shooter in the corner. And at that point as a defense, like, I don't really know what you do, especially when Mitch is out there, because you can't leave his body, even if Mitch is not really a great like lob threat at this point. And like, I know he should be. I don't know why he isn't. Like we can talk about that when he comes back. He's such an offensive rebounding threat. It becomes really, really difficult to leave him. And Brunson was just like cooking. Like there's another one with Sims where he got off the ball, got it back, hit another 3. Another one where like Sims was rolling and like for some reason 2 guys went with him, and Brunson hit a deep 3. I do think at some point you'll see defenses start trying to trap Jalen a little bit more. They couldn't really do that when Josh Hart is setting screens for him, because Hart is such a good playmaker. You can't really do that with Towns because he's gonna take the open shot. But when Sims is in there, when Huck Porty's in there, when Precious or Mitch is in there, I wonder if teams start trapping Brunson a little bit. So that's a different way that teams could go to try to defend that. That could be a little bit more effective, but the Knicks should have solutions off of it, especially with all the shooting they have. I spent a little bit more time on that than I thought. I want to get into another really nice game for Karl Anthony Towns. Mikal Bridges dominating the mid-range, and the Knicks wing defense continuing to look pretty dominant. Before we take a look at the week ahead, and I tell you why, the Houston Rockets could pose a pretty good threat to the Knicks tonight. We get into all that and more next on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL and NBA action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and the NBA all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, what up, guys? We are back on Locked On Knicks. Love getting to do these lives. I got a comment from Jack City, a Knicks fan, just entered the chat. Love to hear that from Jack City. Sherwin, every team plays a beautiful game against the Pistons. They are tanking. Fair, they are better this year. Anyone who watched them against the Celtics this year knows that. Not that the Nets are any great shakes, but the Nets had played pretty well this year, and the Pistons came out and kicked their butt after. They are not good. They are not abjectly awful like they were. But I hear you, Sherwin. Nelly Nell hit the like button. Respect, Nelly Nell. Really appreciate that. Anyways, let's keep going here. We talked about one of the Knicks stars in Jalen Brunson, who I never saw the final stat line. 36 points, 5 assists, 14 to 22 from the floor. That's ridiculous. 6 of 8 from 3. Only needed 2 free throws to get to 36 points in 31 minutes. Just an absurd effort from our guy, Jalen Brunson. Towns, a little bit more of an understated game from him, but I thought one of my favorite games he's played so far. 21 points, 11 rebounds, and here's the number that stands out to me: 7 assists for Karl Anthony Towns. The Knicks are doing a thing now where they are consistently cutting off him, and Jalen in particular does a really nice job leveraging the fact that defenses are terrified of him getting a dribble handoff, coming around Towns and shooting a three by stunting as if he's going to circle around Towns, get the ball, and then cutting back the other way. Towns hit him early on I'm sure you guys remember the play if you were able to watch the game. Beautiful overhead pass to hit Jalen on the cut. Jalen up and under, finish and one. Ended up missing the free throw, but it was really good stuff. And then they're leveraging Cat in like a bunch of different ways. Like there was another play where Jalen was where they ran a little. It's called a Spain pick and roll, where essentially you are screening for the screener with the third player. So Deuce McBride was setting a little back screen for Cat after Cat screened, and it felt like the Pistons actually read it fairly well, and they were like, all right, they're trying to get a pop to Cat for three. And then Jalen just rejects the screen, goes the other way. The Deuce screen, instead of being a screen for Cat, then turns into a screen for Jalen. Jalen strolls in for a layup. That is because Karl Anthony Towns is such a good three-point shooter. And I think the most important thing for Cat right now, not just that he shot 4 for 5 against the Pistons, not that he's shooting, like 70% from three on the year. It's the fact that the threes are going up. Cat took 6 threes in 27 minutes against the Pistons. That is somehow the most threes he's taken all year. Again, the biggest thing with Cat, they're going to go in if he shoots them. It's not about the accuracy on a game-to-game basis. It is the volume. He just has to chuck. He has to take shots that would be considered quote-unquote bad shots for other players. It doesn't matter. Like, he can't be worried about stepping on other guys' toes. He can't be worried like, hey, I could have probably hit Mikal for a mid-range here. No. They need to go up. And in this game, they went up. He's firing without thinking, and that is fantastic. Again, the two-man game between him and Brunson's getting better, developing a bit of a two-man game with OG Anunoby, where Anunoby set a screen. It ended up being like a ghost screen because he pretty quickly bailed and rolled to the rim. 2 guys stuck with Cat. Cat, just like Isaiah Hartenstein, can see over the top, can deliver the ball over the top, hit OG cutting for a layup. The passing in this game for Cat was brilliant, and Cat loves to pass the basketball. The other thing I got to note with Cat, I love the physicality. I love the attitude. At one point, just kind of bullying his way into Isaiah Stewart, flipped up a jump hook, didn't go in, and Cat said, all right, I'm 4 inches taller, I'm 3 inches taller than this guy. Got the ball back, another hip check, layup, should have been an and one. We've seen some dog, and this is a moment for me where I have to say, Cat, I was not familiar with your game, right? Like, I like the attitude. I like the fight. It was offensive rebounding with some abandon. I think this week is going to be a great test for Cat, right? Because you get Şengün, you get Capella, then you get Brook Lopez, right? Capella and to a greater extent, Lopez a bit past their prime, but you get 3 really good centers. Cat has to be nasty, right? These are not, with the exception of the Bucks, like good defensive rebounding teams. Like, I want to see him crashing. I want to see him playing physical. Very similar to the Knicks defense right now. Like, it's easy to be the bully when you're playing the Pistons. Can you be the bully against some of the better teams in the NBA? But I really like what we've seen with Cat. I want to see him continue attacking the dribble. Had an and one drive on Beef Stew. Looked really, really good. Getting all the way to the rim. Hitting trail threes, like getting to the middle twice, spraying it out to Mikal Bridges. That's becoming a fun connection. I thought it was a really good Cat game. OG Anunoby, just a monster. Like, I love the post game quotes we were seeing from Tom Thibodeau after the Heat game, where he was like, "Look, I've had a lot of great defenders, right? Like Jimmy Butler, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah. Shout out Reggie Bullock for the day one Locked On Knicks fan since we've been doing it. He was the guy early on in our tenure. They've had dudes on the perimeter. Tom Thibodeau's had dudes on the perimeter. Mikal Bridges is another one. He said, look, we have not had anything like OG Anunoby. He is different, and you can see this is something I was thinking about a lot preseason, the compounding effect of having 3 wing defenders as good as Hart, Bridges, and Anunoby, and just the collective length of Bridges and Anunoby. And here's the play where that came into play. About halfway through the first quarter, Cade Cunningham, who's had a really good start to this year, tries to go at Josh Hart. And Josh Hart has the core strength and the foot speed to beat Cade to the spot, puff his chest out, wall up, and not let Cade get by him. And what that does is it gives Mikal and OG an opportunity to play the gaps, right? And you're just having two piranhas with plus wingspans, like poking at the basketball. So first Mikal, like he takes a shot. I'm almost thinking, if any of you know Greek mythology, I shout out the Percy Jackson books. A hydra in Greek mythology, right? Like the monster with all the heads, you cut off one, two more grow. That's maybe even the better analogy than piranhas, right? Because you have the main head. That's Josh Hart in this sense. You have the second head coming in. That's Mikal Bridges. Cade says, oh, crap, goes behind the back. Then the third head, OG Anunoby from the other side, comes in, pokes the basketball away, leads to a run out. Jalen Brunson, I can't remember if that was the play hit OG on the lob. I think that was more so the play where he went coast to coast, got a layup. Either way, you saw that happen multiple times. There's another play where Hart walled up and then OG poked it away from Cade, got out of bounds. You're seeing that over and over again where there was just a high level of defensive playmaking. Bridges had 3 steals. Anunoby had 2 steals. Cat had 2 steals. Brunson had 2 steals. Hart had 2 steals. Miles McBride off the bench had 4 steals. The Knicks finished with 16 steals. That's what they're going to do against bad teams. Again, you need to see it against the best teams in the league. And we saw it a little bit against the Cavs with OG making play after play defensively in that matchup. He's a problem for other teams. And the offense was really good. Over the first 8.5 minutes of this game, he single-handedly outscored the Pistons. He's driving well. Like had a play where like he attacked a mismatch, drew 2, dished it to Cat, who ended up getting free throws off of it. I mentioned that inverted pick and roll with Cat. There was another play where Brunson threw it away, and OG just like single-handedly turned like a disaster of a play into a win by stripping Tobias Harris like mid-fast break, throwing it ahead, getting Jalen Brunson another layup. The guy's just ridiculous. And then the other thing I'm looking at with the wings on offense, with OG, with Mikal, with Hart, most teams, right? Not the Celtics, not the Thunder, but most teams have a weak, small defender on the floor pretty much at all times. And the ongoing question this year, as soon as the Knicks made the Cat trade, this was going to be the ongoing question. Where do you hide a weak defender on the New York Knicks, right? It shouldn't be Mikal Bridges because he gets right into that turnaround game where he's been about as efficient in the mid-range as anyone in the NBA. Mikal Bridges this year is shooting, I pulled the stat right before the show, 62% from the mid-range. That is 95th percentile. The jumper looks beautiful. You feel like it's going in every single time. Like he keeps having these cuts off of Jalen driving where instead of getting layups, like he's getting the ball a little bit late because the big is staying home. And instead of trying to like rush and get a layup, he just turns, shoots a little mid-range. It's going in every time. But he can also do that, as I get sidetracked, against the smaller defender and just hit a turnaround. OG Anunoby, I have loved this year, where last year at times it looked a little bit sloppy when he tried a mismatch on. This year, he is aggressive going at smaller players. Like the one that stands out to me is you go back to the Cavs game. He had Darius Garland, and I think it might have been a Coro. It was one of their wings trying to help. And OG just unleashes this like nasty, quick, powerful reverse spin, back pivot to the rim, lays it in lefty. Like he has been aggressive about pushing his advantage. He had another one in this game where I think it was Beasley on him, and he hit a little turnaround. And I've been kind of surprised so far because if I'm an opposing coach, I'm putting my weakest defender on Josh Hart every time, just because Josh Hart sometimes has that killer mentality, attacking smaller guys. More often than not, when he's with the starting unit, he is going to be deferring. So if I were a coach, that is where I would tend to put the guy. I think there are 2 things that are stopping opposing coaches from doing that. One, Josh Hart is clearly the best offensive rebounder of that trio. And I think teams have learned from last year, like where you get killed against the Knicks, and of course it's a little bit different with no Hartenstein and no Mitchell Robinson right now, where you get killed is when the Knicks start getting into their offensive rebounding bag. You put a smaller guy on Josh Hart that has no hope of boxing him out. Good luck. He's crashing every single time. He's going to be getting a lot of rebounds. The other thing you can do if a defense puts their weakest, smallest guy on Josh Hart is get to that Brunson Hart pick and roll, which we saw last year was so deadly. You keep 2 on the ball. He's slipping it to Hart. Hart is playing 4-on-3 in space. with shooters, it's lights out. Hart's going to score. He's going to get a layup. He's going to hit a short runner, or he's going to kick it out, and you're probably going to get an open three. You scramble. You're going to swing it around. The Knicks might get an even better open three. If you don't trap Jalen Brunson, he's going one-on-one against your worst defender, which honestly, if I'm defenses and you have the right personnel, that might be the right answer, because then you can double once he drives and you can play in rotation. You can hope the Knicks don't pass it well enough. The issue is the Knicks are passing it really well, unless you're the Cavs and you have Evan Mobley and you have Jared Allen, or you're the Celtics and you have guys like Drew Holiday and Derek White that, again, can fight over the screen and keep the matchup, or you can switch anything and there's no weak point. It's going to be really, really hard to deal with. So that is the way the Knicks are really hurting other teams right now. We will come back, one or two final notes on this Pistons game, and then I want to quickly preview the week ahead, because there is a lot of interesting stuff this week with the Rockets, the Hawks, and the Bucks. We will get into all that next, right here on Locked On Knicks. But first, we want to tell you about our good friends over at Gametime. You guys might know this. I recently moved to the Phoenix area, and I'm living literally a block away from the Suns arena, or within a few blocks of the Suns arena. And I've been looking into Knicks Suns tickets, because the Knicks are here in about 2 weeks. And I've been using Gametime's new feature called Gametime Picks. So what does Gametime Picks do that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier? Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And if I want to go really high baller, I could spend almost $200, which is basically the price to get an MSG anyways, and get pretty much center row, lower bowl seats to watch my Knicks. I'm probably not going to do that. Not really in the budget right now. So instead, for $26, I can get into the building to watch the Knicks play. Again, I could never do that at MSG, but I could also never do that without the power of Gametime Picks. The other thing Gametime offers is their lowest price guarantee, which means if you find a lower price on a different ticketing site, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. That's right, 110% of the difference. That is incredible. It means you're always going to have the lowest price on Gametime. There's literally no way to have a lower price, because you find one, Gametime will give you the refund for 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. Hey, what's up, guys? We are back on Locked On Knicks, wrapping up this Pistons recap, looking at the week ahead. Only other thing I want to note, shout out to Mikal Bridges and his passing. Had a nasty one where he was staring down Jalen in transition the way Jalen was cooking. The Pistons' eyes all went to Jalen, and then he had a no-look, sweeping righty pass to a cutting Josh Hart, just perfectly weighted. The playmaking has looked really good for Mikal so far. I saw Shaq's talking about this. We're in Brooklyn. The numbers weren't always great. He wasn't always consistent. The spacing the Knicks are providing him, the fact that he does not typically have the best defender on the other team on him most nights, it's looking really good. He also had a nasty transition swat on Jaden Ivey. A real quick shout out to the rooks, Pacom Dadier hitting a tough pull-up 18-footer. Tyler Kolek pull up at the free throw line, pull up at the left block. Both those guys looked really good. But I don't want to sit in Pistons world forever. I want to get ahead to this week, because I think it is going to be a telling week for the New York Knicks, as they are now 4-2, or only 3-2 on the year. Was I making that up? They have 3-2 on the year. Hopefully, it'll be 4-2 after tonight. And this is a chance to the standings are whatever at this point. Obviously, you want the Knicks to move up. Obviously, you want them to win games. They're going to be chasing the Celtics all year. But I kind of want to see the Knicks catch a rhythm, right? Because this is going to be their last kind of test of a stretch for a while. I mentioned this earlier, but the Knicks play the fourth easiest schedule in the NBA, at least based on 2023 records. And these next 6 or 7 games are part of that really tough opening slate. Culminates with that game against the Sixers in 8-9 days. And I want to see the Knicks pushed, and I want to see how they respond against 3 teams that you could say are a mixed bag, right? Atlanta's been kind of average so far. Milwaukee, obviously deeply disappointing. I think people are underestimating how good this Houston Rockets team is. Cleaning the Glass has them playing in terms of their net rating at a 50-win pace so far. They're 11th in the NBA in offense. They're 11th in the NBA in defense. And they bring a lot of good stuff to the table. I don't know how many of you guys caught their game against the Warriors. They were down by 35 points against the Warriors team that in terms of net rating has been the best team in all of basketball so far. Maybe the third best team when you account for level of competition. But they came back. They actually took the lead with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And the Rockets are explosive, but they are also volatile because they don't really have an identity yet, right? They are kind of what the Knicks were going to be before they made the trades, before Isaiah Hartenstein left. And that is the deepest team in the NBA, right? Like there are just so many different weapons they bring off their bench. There's so many different styles of play that they could bring to the table, but it has created a little bit of an identity crisis where they don't really know what they're leaning into on a night-to-night basis. They just gave Alperen Şengün a $160 million contract. On paper, he is their best player, and yet he didn't play the fourth quarter. He did not play in overtime against the Golden State Warriors because their best lineup right now, and this is going off the two games I watched. Jackson Gatlin over at Locked On Rockets could maybe correct me on this, but from what I've seen, their best lineup is when they go super small and they have a combination of Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson or Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason or another one of their wings, and Jabari Smith Jr. playing center. They are explosive. They are aggressive. Tari Eason, if you guys remember, we talked about him a lot 3 years ago with Prez, who was a big fan of him when we were covering that. I think it was the 2021 draft, maybe the 2022 draft. And man, that kid is special. Career high 27 points against the Warriors, had 4 steals that turned into layups or dunks in about 8 minutes, just single-handedly flipped the Warriors game on its head. Like it honestly, it reminded me a little of what OG's been doing. It reminded me a little of a young Kawhi Leonard. Like he took over that game defensively in a way you almost never see a wing do. And they are just so athletic when they have him and Amen Thompson out there. And Amen Thompson has gotten off to a pretty slow start this year. He was a monster against the Warriors, like over and over again, like driving, and Golden State was doing a good job sticking with him. And he would just hang on 1 feet, 6'8", great balance, really nice touch around the rim. You're okay letting him shoot threes at this point, but sometimes he'll like put his head down, get downhill, and he's just like a 1 or 2 percentile athlete, top 1 or 2 percentile athlete. And maybe I should flip that. He's a 100th percentile athlete. I'll say that. He's elite athletically would be the cleanest way to say it. Other things to watch against the Rockets, right? Like are they going to lean into Şengün? Are they going to lean into that small ball lineup? Ime Udoka kind of took shots at Şengün's conditioning. I don't think it was that. I think that he likes the flexibility on defense. I think he likes having a spacer and Jabari Smith Jr. at the 5. It gives them more flexibility. But will they play Şengün down the stretch? Will they try to go small against the Knicks? We've not really seen teams go small. The Celtics obviously can approximate that with Al Horford shooting. We really, really saw Karl Anthony Towns and, of course, the wings struggle defensively in that one. I want to see how the Knicks handle small ball. I want to see how they handle 4-out shooting from another team because they've done a little bit better against teams, obviously, that don't shoot the basketball like that so far this year. Fred VanVleet has been a killer against the Knicks since they've got Jalen Brunson. In his last 6 games against the Knicks, he's averaged right around 29 points, just under 30 a game. Super efficient for whatever reason, maybe because they're similar size. They're both stocky. Loves to go against Jalen Brunson. I'm wondering if the Knicks start the game with Mikal Bridges on him. Houston can make that kind of challenging with some of the size of their wings. Like, I'm curious where the Knicks would hide Jalen Brunson. Like, do you put him on Jalen Green, who's been pretty good to start this season? Do you try to hide him on Dylan Brooks? That would be interesting. Maybe they'll just stick with the matchup and Jalen coming off a great defensive game against the Pistons. I think he's played some of the better defense of his career overall this year. So maybe the Knicks stick with that. That's one to watch. The Rockets are an elite offensive rebounding team, second in the NBA in offensive rebounding so far. They are not super efficient scoring the basketball, but they kill you on the glass with their athletes and their physicality, and they have a very low turnover rate. So it's kind of the model of the Knicks offense the last couple of years. Their defense is kind of high risk, high reward. They force a bunch of turnovers, but they're pretty foul prone. You can hit them on the glass a little bit because they don't always play super big, and especially when they're small, like that's what I'm looking for Towns to go out there and kick some butt. Their rim protection has been surprisingly good in terms of not allowing high efficiency at the rim. Even though Şengün isn't great, you can get to the rim though a pretty good amount against their teams. And then from three, it's the opposite. They are the best in the NBA at stopping you from shooting threes, but they give up pretty high efficiency when you do get threes off. So that is maybe the most pivotal battle of this one. Can the Knicks get off a high volume of threes against the team that is the best in the NBA at preventing them from getting off? That's going to be really interesting. A little bit, some quicker thoughts on the Hawks and the Bucks. The Hawks, minus 3.5 net rating so far, 9th best offense, 28th best defense. Something to watch, though. They've been really, really good with their best lineups on the floor. This is from Brad Rowland, Locked On Hawks host today. They have a plus 12 net rating with Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, and Clint Capella on the floor. They have a plus 17 net rating with Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, and Clint Capella on. And then Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Capella is a plus 19. They've insulated Trae Young in a way they've never been able to in the past. We will see if DeAndre Hunter is able to play. He's been dealing with a knee injury on and off early season. But when they can get to that starting lineup they want, with Daniels, with Hunter, with Jalen Johnson, with Clint Capella, that is a lot of size, a lot of switchability around Trae Young. It is very, very similar to how the Knicks have tried to insulate Jalen Brunson. The defense has not been good so far. So I'm wondering if they're all clicking, if Quinn Snyder has that system figured out yet. But there is a chance that they have a better game against the New York Knicks on that end of the floor. And I actually do think the potential's there. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries for the Hawks to be a pretty good team. I do think one area the Knicks can hurt them is when the bench is in and the Knicks can lean into like putting out those. I really like the Cat, McHale, Cam, Deuce, and I guess Anunoby group is the one that's had a lot of success. No Bogdan Bogdanovic. He's out for the next few weeks. I think it's a hamstring injury. He's a guy who's really hurt the Knicks in the past. They will not have a lot of bench scoring. That is an area where the Knicks can really separate. They have been dramatically better defensively when Capella's on the floor than when he's off the floor. I think part of that also is he's playing the bulk of his minutes with Dyson Daniels, but you could attack Onyeka Okongwu in ways you can't with Capella because he's not quite as big. So that is something to watch early season. The Bucks are fascinating. I watched that whole Bucks-Cavs game over the weekend. They are really not in a good place right now. If Chris Middleton is magically back for that game, even though he, as far as I know, has not started like fully ramping up yet, that could certainly make a difference. They are a much more dangerous team with him. But right now they're a two-man group, right? Like you watch that game, and I think what was it? It was Dame and I got it in my notes here. It was Dame and Giannis in that game combining for 70. Hold on, I'm scrolling. I'm trying to stall a little bit here. They combined in that game. I do not have it up where I thought I had it up. Something like 78 points in that game. Dame had 41. Giannis had 34. Dame had 10 threes. Everyone else on their team, and this is despite Taurean Prince being scalding hot, had 35 points on 15 of 48 shooting. So they get the best possible Dame game. They get the best possible Giannis game, and they still lose to the Cavs on a last-second Donovan Mitchell pull-up two. They have just had some major structural issues. I think a lot of it starts with Brook Lopez just not being the same guy. Like you would look at their rim protection numbers in the past, and you would laugh. Right, like they were like in the 50s. Like teams could not finish at the rim on them. This year, teams are shooting 68% at the rim. That is not like one of the lowest marks in the NBA, but their defense is kind of contingent on them being elite in that category, and they are so far from elite in terms of their rim protection at this point. A bunch of issues across the board on top of the rim protection issues. Part of it, and I think this is where that rim protection number is getting higher. It's not just that Brook Lopez is getting older and he's like not the same athlete he was. It is that you go from Drew Holiday and having the best point of attack defense at the point guard position to some of the worst point of attack defense in the entire NBA at the point guard position, whether it's Damian Lillard or Gary Trent Jr. You see teams going at their small guards over and over and over again. And that is why even going back to last year, we talked about the Bucks flipping from the worst matchup for the Knicks in the NBA, right? What was it? 9 straight wins Milwaukee had against the Knicks. Like pre-Jalen Brunson, post-Jalen Brunson in the Tom Thibodeau era, the Knicks could not figure out the Milwaukee Bucks. to now being a relatively good matchup because they just have no one that has a shot in the world at guarding Jalen Brunson. And the really scary thing is, like, whether it's Dame or Trent, probably Trent guarding Jalen, that is a total mismatch. You then have to figure out, all right, where the hell are we putting Damian Lillard? Is he guarding Josh Hart, and is he going to get beat for rebounds over and over again? Is OG Anunoby putting him in the stanchion? Is Mikal Bridges lofting like feathery fadeaways over him over and over again, right? There are just not a lot of answers for the Milwaukee Bucks defensively right now. And offensively, like you see guys who are scared to shoot, like they're forced to play Andre Jackson Jr., who I actually quite like as a player because they need his defense, they need his athleticism, they need his speed, they need his playmaking. But the guy doesn't really want to shoot the basketball. Hit one nice three against the Cavs, like was scared to shoot it from 6 feet away. And until Middleton is back, there is just not really a solution there. They are down bad right now. They are going to be playing desperate basketball. Maybe Giannis does enough. Maybe Dame gets really hot again. He's a little bit more hit or miss at this point in his career. Before that 41-point game, he had a 4-point game against the Grizzlies. There are worlds where the Bucks can beat the Knicks. I think that's a good matchup for the Knicks, and I just want to see it play out because that's a potential first-round matchup, right? If Milwaukee really struggles this year and they're the 6th seed or the 7th seed, and the Knicks are the 2 or 3 seed, like we could see that early on in the playoffs. And I would not particularly want that just because like that is one of the few series where the Knicks would not have the best player on the floor, and yet like the Knicks have some real ways to attack the Bucks. Going to be fun to see OG Anunoby guarding Giannis. Like I thought he did a really good job holding his own when in the past it was pretty contingent on like Julius Randle having an out-of-body experience or Mitchell Robinson walling up against Giannis. OG is like a great one-on-one option to have. And I'm excited to see Mikal chasing Dame around, right? Like this is why you go and get Mikal Bridges, give up 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. His ability to navigate screens, chase Dame, like rear view contest, hopefully like stick behind enough that Cat has a chance against Dame at the rim. That is all stuff to watch. I think it's going to be a really fun week in Knicks basketball. I'm so excited to get into it with you guys. Jesus Christ. It is going to be a lot of fun. Quick comments. I want to catch up before we go to take advantage of this live show. There are a million of them. Bernard Dalbert said, if the Pistons are taking, what does it say about the Nets? That's a funny one. Kim Jennings, top of the morning. Shout out to Kim. He's always commenting. He's always participating. Once we polish and we already got the guys that are hurt come back, we're going to be a problem. Totally agree with that. I was in on the trade. King Ja, I believe Cat can be good against elite defenders. Gabe Bam, 44-12. Great point from King Ja, 1985. Kim, appreciate the support again. I'm going to have a blast nil at Suns Knicks. Bunch of good comments. Giannis to the Knicks. Maybe we'll talk about that if things keep going bad in Milwaukee, how that could potentially happen. I do think ultimately Oklahoma City would be the favorite there. And you know what? That's it for this edition of the Locked On Knicks podcast. Really appreciate all you guys joining in this morning. I'm going to try to do more of these morning lives because I see we are getting like a ton of participation, and maybe even as a bonus episode, we do a full episode just coming on and talking to you guys and doing Q of A's. But until next time, this has been Locked On Knicks. We'll be talking Rockets tomorrow morning. Till then, peace out. Enjoy your day. Talk to you soon.